If you have any specific questions about, hey, I didn't really understand, I've had some really good conversations and I'd like to bring them up and we can do it in a Zoom. But what I wanted to kind of do is just go over your first couple things that hopefully will help you. In chapter 1, please don't get lost in the details. There's a lot of backstory about the Finch family and their great-great-grandpa who lived on Finch's Landing and he owned That's there to kind of show you that mentality. And why it talks about that is because Atticus and his brother broke away from that mold, okay? Not only in their chosen schooling and their chosen professions, but in their mentality, okay? They are very different than the other people in Maycomb. There's only one other character that has an Atticus-esque quality, and that's Miss Maudie. I'd love to say, you know, he's my favorite character, that's my favorite part. I'm probably going to say that 100 times per day, per chapter. So don't get lost in the exposition. Just kind of understand what she's talking about. What she's talking about. Scout, the narrator. Starts as a flashback. That first line for a 31 chapter book is, when my brother was nearly 13 years old, he broke his arm badly at the elbow. Seems kind of like a frivolous line. It is one of those stories that starts here and it's going to flash back to that point. So that should tell you that that moment is pivotal. It may seem insignificant. So what, he broke his arm. Big deal. Kids break their arm all the time. But to make that your first line of the story, it has to be monumentous. Okay? As Scout is the little girl telling the story, there's a lot of humor, not always appropriate, but there's a lot of humor in the story, which I still laugh out loud reading the book 30 plus times. I'm probably going to start reading it again tonight. She has a very frank and honest persona about herself, but little kids do. You know, she should. When she talks about, you know, she has a question, she's straightforward to ask. And that's the relationship these kids have with their dad. They ask and he tells them. He may use words that they have no idea what it means, but he tells them. And they're satisfied with the information because he's been truthful. And therefore they assume that every adult is truthful and honest. Although Scout is telling the story, it's really a coming of age story for her brother Jim. So there are going to be moments that she just doesn't understand what's happening with him. They're growing apart. If you've had a brother or sister that's older or younger and you remember the one who pulled away or the one that was left behind, that's what's happening with these two. So with Jem, you're going to see moments of childishness and moments of great maturity. The introduction of first, remember that's the expository. It's got to set everything up. So it's a long and lengthy chapter full of information. We have Dill, the summer character. Okay, Dill's kind of representative of childhood. When he comes, it's fun and free times. He comes in the summer, no school, you know, they have their thing, they have their dynamic, their Radley game, trying to get Boo Radley to come out. Why is that so fascinating? What else do they have to do? There's no TikTok, there's no text messaging, there's no TV. There's radio and reading. You'd be out of your minds. So they make believe, they play outside, and this gives them material to work with, although their father frowns upon that. Okay, so remember, Scout's telling you the story as she grows from the ages of 6 onward. So remember that when she speaks, because she has such a humor to her that is just, to me, as authentic as you can possibly be. They talk about the Radley family that lives up the street and that there was never a meaner man than Mr. Radley. And when he dies, the brother then becomes the prison guard to Arthur Boo Radley. It is often confused about the races. So remember that chart. The Finches are white. Everybody that lives in that small town, white. We have the Cunninghams, we have the Yules. When we get to Tom and Calpurnia in that larger outer circle, remember they can't live. Neighborhoods were segregated. They weren't allowed to live there. So it's very important you know what race they are to better understand the story. The idea of education is also explored in those first few chapters. Scout already knows how to read. We might say she's gifted, but her dad, that's their special time together. He reads her the paper and they read back and forth. When she goes to school already knowing these things, Miss Caroline, who is not a native of Macomb, who probably is the closest thing to a rich white woman or witch, either way, is. Her fingernails are all painted white. She's very pristine. And there's these little dirty kids. Burrs, you'll think of little Chuck Little. These kids are children, but they have seen the harsh realities, and they have already, many of them in the first grade, lost their childhood. You know, when she sees that little creepy crawly thing, the bug in Burris's head, and she's like, oh my gosh, and she's freaking out, it's little Chuck Little who escorts her by her elbow. Ma'am, just sit down. Let's get you a cool glass of water. He's in the first grade. Granted, repeatedly, he's in the first grade, but he's wise beyond his years. He even says, I got a knife in my pocket. I'll cut you as soon as I look at you, Burris. First grade. Imagine, first day of school. It's very exciting. Also, the use of idioms and colloquialisms, like their own language. Sorry, I get excited. When she says, he made me get off on the wrong foot, and she's beating the heck out of Walter Cunningham. She doesn't know what that means. She just is like, everybody laughed at me, and I got in trouble, and it's all your fault. Even though she was the only one who would explain, he's a Cunningham man. You're shaming him. Jem shows his maturity by inviting Walter over for dinner, which is their big meal of the day because they didn't have a cafeteria system back then. As you go through, pay attention to the characters. I do want to have some more dialogue, and I'll post another video for the 4, 5, and 6 chapters and as we go through. But hopefully this will give you something. When, you know, the children are trying to get Boo to come out, think of their great ideas. A letter on a fishing pole. Sneaking across, okay, and getting shot at by Mr. Nathan Radley, which is the difference. Mr. Radley was the father. Mr. Nathan Radley is the older brother. If you really thought it was a prowler and someone of a different race, would he have just shot in the sky? Or does he know that it was the children and he's just sending a strict message? And to get the rest of the adults on board, he brings in their biggest fear. Somebody's trying to get on his property, a black. Okay, so that is the elements you want to look for. You want to notice how it's all weaved together. You want to notice the innocence and why the story might be told from Scout's point of view, but why is it a story all about Jem? Please send your questions to me about specific parts or specific things in the study guide, because it actually makes me feel like a real teacher, and I love talking about it. So I will do some more videos for probably tomorrow for 4, 5, and 6. Have a great night.